Hi, everyone. I'm Devon Coombs, CPA, MBA, ex-Google and Deloitte, and lecturer at San Jose State. And today I'm going to be talking through the mechanics of forecast versus actual analysis, or FP&A. The first part of the lecture covers really a conceptual understanding of the mechanics of our ability to predict the future and how you can apply it to your personal life. So watch that video if you haven't watched it yet. And if you want any of these materials, go to the Master Resource Index for the 10 Laws of Finance, which is in the description below. Thank you for watching, and let's get straight to it. Most people are just terrible at planning the future. So many people in business mess up. And the reason you know this is because most people aren't rich. Most people don't have successful businesses. It's hard to make a successful business. It's hard to be good at managing finances. There's a lot of mistakes we make. And that's because we think in straight lines, but the world operates in exponential curves. So when we're assuming linear progress, when we're assuming that things are just going to move in a regular way, but growth and people and businesses change exponentially, then we're not going to support those businesses appropriately. So to plan correctly, we need to use different tools in business to understand how to predict the future more accurately. And so what we're going to do first is you can't just be using regular average growth rates. We use CAGR. And so that's the compound annual growth rate when we're trying to set long-term goals. So if I'm looking at a business and a small business comes to me and says, I'm trying to get to $200,000 in revenue in 10 years. I'm not going to look and say, here's your linear forecast to get to that revenue. I'm going to assume exponential growth, where every year they're going to grow their revenue in addition to the previous year's growth. And that's what the CAGR rate is. I have the formula on the board here. You need to understand these exponential curves because that's really how businesses grow. Those raises are going to compound over and over and over again. And that's going to lead to much faster growth than you initially anticipate. The next piece that people mess up. So you have to use CAGR when you're using these models. You don't want to use linear forecasts because we understand that linear thinking is going to lead to incorrect planning and incorrect outcomes. The next is you don't want to forecast just outcomes. You want to control the inputs. And so one of the big examples that always surprises me with my students is I say, I have a consulting business and I want you to advise me on how I can improve the revenue of this consulting business. And I'll tell this to my students. And I normally get blank faces. And so if you're in my class this semester, I don't want a blank face. There's only two ways for me to get more revenue in a consulting business. I can increase the price of each hour of service that I'm providing, or I can increase the amount of hours that I'm providing those services, either by myself or hiring more people. And that will drive more revenue. That's it. That's all I can do. I can control the price, or I can control drivers in order to get more clients and get more hours, and that can increase my revenue. When I'm making goals, I don't want to make a goal saying I will increase my revenue by 100,000. I want to understand the drivers to that goal. I'm going to acquire 10 clients, and this is how I'm going to do it at what rate. So you want the volume and the price. This gives you operational levers to pull. Then you can understand if you want to invest in marketing, then you can understand if I need to invest in hiring staff or whatever it may be. A miss on volume requires a marketing solution. A miss on price means you might need to negotiate better and improve the quality of your services. So you really want to understand what are the inputs to drive that output in order to have a successful business forecast. You don't want to just have one case. And so what we call this in business is the base case. And so I'll look at my historical numbers, forecast out a base case based off this historical numbers, but then I want to understand the bull case. What is the best case scenario and what drives that? What's the bear case? What's the worst case scenario? And then what's great about this is you can try to maximize for the bull case. If you realize as a consulting business, the biggest bottleneck is I'm not hiring people because I have too much work. Maybe if you double down on hiring people, we can reach this bull case. A bear case is maybe I get sued or something bad happens there. Well, hey, I can get insurance to make sure we mitigate against the bear cases. So a good finance professional is going to bring all this strategic insight to the business to understand how you can maximize the bull case, how you can protect against the bear case, and then you're going to have your base case and determine is the base case actually reasonable rather than just looking at historicals. Then we're going to want to stress test those cases. There's two types of stress tests that I really like to use and are best practices. One is a sensitivity analysis. So you'll look at all those drivers and say, what happens if we change one thing? What if interest rates rise 1%? Or what if I raise my prices 10%? How will that impact my customer acquisition? How will that impact my rates? And by playing with this, you can identify drivers or make a dashboard on the biggest drivers to your business and how you can improve them. What if I hired 5 employees or 10 employees? How could that improve my business? We could also look at different scenarios, like what happens if a recession hits? What happens if I get acquired? You can simulate complete future states. These are both really beneficial because you can also then apply other topics that we've used in this class, like expected value analysis, and assign likelihoods to each of the scenarios or the bear or the bull case in order to determine the likelihood of an outcome occurring. So you get better at predicting the future. We're being scientists here. We're actually measuring real things and trying to understand the truth. What you're doing by making a model is you're making a hypothesis. You're essentially saying, I think this is going to happen because of all of my educated guesses. And then reality is going to happen. And so the best people then add an explanation to understand why there was a difference. So a forecast out on day one. Hey, I think we're going to make an extra $20,000 next year. And then next year we made $100,000. Why did we make so much more? What happened that drove that difference? You should be able to articulate what were the drivers of those differences. Were they just timing? Something happened? And maybe more customers came earlier than expected, and that this won't happen again, so we don't need to make another adjustment. It's just things got accelerated or things got delayed. Or was this a permanent variance? Some underlying assumption was wrong. Turns out, hey, our rates were way too low. We increased the rates, and now our revenue's appropriate. And then you need to rebuild the whole underlying model. When you're in a big organization, when I was at major organizations, this was done all of the time. You would have to understand and explain every single month why the numbers changed, if they were permanent versus timing differences, if you should adjust the models going forward, and if the business need to make any adjustments. And that's what makes an excellent finance professional. And the best finance professionals go into operations. They go into CEO, COO roles because they're able to guide and understand the business and know the levers of the business and what needs to change to drive success. So this slide just summarizes what you would do in order to build a good forecasting workflow, or this is like an ideal forecasting workflow. First is any data you get. So if I'm going to a new company and they say, hey, I want you to build me a forecast to drive our valuations. First, I'm going to look at the data and say, is this good data? Is it audited data? Is it clean? Is it normalized? I want to make sure it's good data. Gaibo still holds garbage in, garbage out. So if I do not have good data in the first place, then I can't make a good outcome. You have to understand where you are. If you're not doing that right, then you're not going to be able to forecast correctly. Once you have that, you build your baseline case. So you're just going to do the CAGR. You're going to look at what the estimated growth rates for whatever you're forecasting out and look at the future. What's the most likely outcome based on history? History tends to be a good driver of the future. You're going to stress test it with sensitivity analysis or scenario analysis. Is there a bull case? Is there a bear case? What are the drivers of those cases? Are the interest rate or is it a recession? You're going to be able to identify primary drivers. And so once you have those primary drivers, you're able to combine that with your bear and bull case to layer on strategy and strategic advice to your operations organizations and executive organizations. So you can plan intervention to mitigate against the bear case, like getting insurance or doing currency hedges or inflation hedges, or maximize the bull cases, making strategic investments where needed. Then you're just going to track an update, do your forecast versus actual, explain the variances, really understand them, and then start all over again. Look at the data, see if you're getting it right, make sure you're starting from ground one and do the cycle over again. If you do that, if you just go from this strategic view and always remember this and cycle back, where am I in the forecasting workflow? You're going to be leagues ahead of most finance professionals. This is best class what you need to do as an FP&A leader. So that's it. So this is going to get you from moving from static guessing to living strategy. And it's going to not just make you a finance professional, it's going to make you an awesome executive strategic decision maker, not just in business, but also in your personal life. So great forecasting isn't prediction. It's a dynamic tool for making decisions in an uncertain world. So I hope you found this helpful. If you need anything else, just reach out to me. And I hope you have a great day and thank you for watching. Bye-bye.